I found the email 3 days before our 10th anniversary. 10 years of marriage, a decade of memories, countless promises, all shattered by a single notification on his carelessly unlocked iPad. The device glowed in the darkness of our bedroom, as I heard Robert showering, preparing for what he'd told me was another late meeting with the Singapore team. The calendar notification was innocent enough. Meeting with Natalie, 8:30 p.m., Hotel Indigo. But the attached email thread was anything but innocent. "Can't wait to feel your skin against mine again," she'd written. "These hotel meetings are the highlight of my week." His reply had been equally explicit, detailing exactly what he planned to do once they were alone, followed by a postscript that felt like a dagger to my heart. "Taking care of the anniversary gift this week. She still has no idea what's happening behind the scenes." I sat motionless on our California king bed, the one we'd saved for 3 months to buy when we first moved into this house. The shower continued running in our ensuite bathroom, Robert humming that annoying 90s song he always hummed when he was looking forward to something, or someone. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. My hands didn't shake. My breath didn't quicken. Instead, a peculiar calm settled over me as I took screenshots, forwarded the entire thread to my personal email, and returned the iPad to his nightstand exactly as I'd found it. The perfect wife, cleaning up after her husband, making sure everything was in its proper place. 10 years with Robert had taught me one invaluable lesson: never let them see you coming. The bathroom door opened in a cloud of steam, and Robert emerged with a towel around his waist, water droplets clinging to his chest hair that had started graying just last year. At 42, he still looked good, infuriatingly good, for a senior investment banker who spent most of his days behind a desk and most of his nights, apparently, with someone named Natalie. "Hey, babe, sorry about tonight," he said, leaning down to kiss my forehead. I allowed it, my face a perfect mask of understanding. The Singapore merger is in its final stages. Martin needs everyone on deck. Martin, his boss, who had patted my ass at last year's Christmas party and then apologized by sending a fruit basket to our house. Martin, who had divorced his own wife, after 25 years when his administrative assistant suddenly received a director-level promotion. "I understand," I replied, my voice steady. "The Henderson account needs attention anyway. I'll work late too." He smiled, relieved at my compliance. "That's my girl, always the understanding one." As he dressed in his third most expensive suit, he reserved the top 2 for client meetings, not mistress rendezvous. I opened my laptop and pretended to review documents for my own job as a corporate event planner. Instead, I was drafting a very different kind of plan. Robert kissed me goodbye, his lips brushing mine with practiced efficiency rather than passion. "Don't wait up. I'll probably crash in the downtown apartment if it goes too late." The downtown apartment, maintained by his firm for visiting executives, which Robert had access to as a senior partner. How convenient. "Of course," I smiled. "Good luck with Singapore." The door closed behind him, and I listened as his BMW purred to life in our circular driveway, the sound fading as he drove toward Hotel Indigo and Natalie, whoever she was. Only then did I allow myself to feel the rage, preparing and narrating. This story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Robert and I had met at Northwestern, both ambitious business students with 5-year plans and color-coded calendars. His family money had paid for his education. My scholarships and 3 part-time jobs had paid for mine. He'd been attracted to my drive. I'd been attracted to his confidence. We'd married 2 years after graduation, once we'd both secured promising positions in Chicago's financial district. For 10 years, I'd supported his career moves, organized dinner parties for his clients, maintained our social calendar with other power couples, and postponed having children because the timing wasn't right for his career trajectory. I'd built my own successful business planning high-end corporate events, but always accommodated his schedule first. The perfect power couple, according to our Christmas card photo and matching LinkedIn profiles. And now, 3 days before he was supposed to surprise me with some elaborate anniversary gift, probably another piece of jewelry I'd wear twice a year at functions where it was important to display his success. He was meeting his mistress at a hotel. I called my assistant, Zoe. Despite the late hour, she answered on the second ring. Miranda? Everything okay? I need you to clear my schedule for the next 2 weeks starting tomorrow. Family emergency. Oh no, is everything... I'm fine, but I need the time. Also, I need you to contact Savannah Chen. Remember her? The divorce attorney who hired us for her firm's holiday party last year? A pause on the line. Miranda. Just her direct number. Zoe. And complete discretion. Another pause. Sending. It to your personal email now. And Miranda? Whatever's happening, I'm here. Thank you. One more thing. What was the budget Robert gave you for my anniversary surprise? He said not to tell you, Zoe replied, her voice careful. Zoe, I'm your boss, not him. She sighed. 50,000. He transferred it last week for the special project. I nearly dropped the phone. $50,000. For an anniversary? Gift. Or at least, that's what he'd told Zoe. Who knew what portion of that was actually intended for me versus his extracurricular activities with Natalie? Thank you. I'll be in touch tomorrow. I hung up and opened my laptop again, this time, logging into our joint account. Robert maintained separate accounts for his personal investments, but we'd established a joint account early in our marriage for household expenses and special occasions. Sure enough, there was a transfer from his personal account, $50,000. Exactly, dated 1 week ago. Next, I logged into the account connected to my event planning business. 10 years of careful management and strategic networking had turned Miranda Hayes Events into one of Chicago's premier corporate event planning agencies. While Robert might out-earn me with his investment banking salary and bonuses, I was far from financially dependent. My business had healthy reserves, a strong client base, and, most importantly, a separate legal structure that protected it from being considered marital property. Robert had insisted on a prenuptial agreement before we married, concerned about protecting his family's generational wealth. At the time, I'd had nothing to protect. Now the agreement would ironically protect my business from him. A business currently sitting on just over $2 million in liquid assets. I made a single phone call that night after confirming Savannah Chen's contact information in the email from Zoe. Despite the late hour, she answered. Savannah Chen speaking. Savannah, this is Miranda Hayes. We worked together on your firm's holiday party last year. Miranda, of course. Your team did an incredible job. Are you calling about our upcoming partner retreat? Because I was just about to reach out. Actually, I'm calling because I need a divorce attorney. The best one. You. Silence. Then a shift in her tone from friendly to professional. I see. Are you somewhere safe to talk right now? Yes. My husband is out for the evening. The words felt surreal as they left my mouth. I have an opening tomorrow, at 7 a.m., before my official hours. Would that work? I'll be there. Miranda, before tomorrow, don't confront him. Don't move money between accounts. Don't do anything that might alert him. Evidence gathering is critical in these early stages. Understood. And Savannah? Money is no object. After hanging up, I opened our shared digital photo album, scrolling through images of vacations, dinner parties, charity galas, all perfectly choreographed moments of our supposedly perfect life. In almost every photo, Robert had his arm around my waist, the proud husband displaying his accomplished wife. Had Natalie seen these photos? Had he told her I was cold, neglectful, too focused on my career? Had he convinced her and himself that he deserved something on the side? I closed the album and opened a new document, titling it simply, plan. Then I began to type. By morning, I'd slept exactly 2 hours, showered, and dressed in what I thought of as my client acquisition outfit, a tailored navy suit that conveyed both authority and approachability, paired with Louboutin heels that Robert had given me for Christmas last year. Every power woman needs her armor, he'd said, unaware of the irony. My makeup was flawless, concealing the dark circles under my eyes. No one looking at me would suspect I'd discovered my decade-long marriage was a lie just hours before. Robert had texted at 11:30 p.m. Meeting running late, staying at the apartment downtown. Don't wait up. I'd replied with a simple, no problem. Good luck with Singapore. At 6:55 a.m., I walked into the gleaming downtown offices of Chen Watkins & Berg, one of Chicago's most prestigious family law firms specializing in high-net-worth divorces. The reception area was empty except for Savannah herself, impeccably dressed in a crimson suit, her expression composed but compassionate. Miranda, she greeted me, extending her hand. Let's go to my office. Her corner office overlooked the Chicago River, the morning sun glinting off the water and glass skyscrapers. Under different circumstances, I might have admired the view, maybe even made notes about the tasteful yet powerful design choices for future client consultations. Instead, I placed my phone on her desk, opened to the screenshots I'd taken the night before, and slid it toward her. My husband is cheating on me. Our 10th anniversary is in 3 days. I want him out of my life, and I want to protect everything I've built. Savannah read through the messages, her expression unchanging except for a slight narrowing of her eyes. Then she looked up at me. How long have you been married? 10 years next Tuesday. Children? No. She nodded, making a note. Property? House. In Lincoln Park, jointly owned. Downtown condo, his name only but purchased during marriage. Vacation house in Michigan, jointly owned. Various investment accounts, some joint, some separate. His family has a trust that predates our marriage. Your business? Solely in my name, established after marriage but protected by our prenup as separate property. She raised an eyebrow. You have a prenup? Yes, his family insisted. A small smile curved her lips. May I see it? I withdrew the document from my briefcase and handed it to her. She scanned it quickly, her smile growing slightly. This is advantageous. For you. How so? It's quite detailed about protecting his family's assets and your separate business interests, but rather vague about assets acquired during marriage. The infidelity clause is particularly interesting. I leaned forward. Infidelity clause? She turned the document toward me, pointing to a section on page 4. If either party commits adultery, the wronged spouse is entitled to an additional 20% of jointly acquired assets beyond the standard 50-50 split. I stared at the words, remembering signing the document in his family's attorney's office. Robert had explained everything so carefully, emphasizing how it protected both of us. Had he even read it himself? Or had he been so confident in his own fidelity, or perhaps in my inability to discover any infidelity, that he hadn't worried about this clause? So, if I can prove he's cheating, you're entitled to 70% of all assets acquired during your marriage, excluding his family trust and your business. Savannah leaned back in her chair. Do you have access to your joint accounts? Yes, all of them. Good. Now, before we proceed, I need to ask, are you certain you want a divorce? Some couples work through infidelity with counseling. I met her gaze steadily. Absolutely certain. She nodded. Then here's what we're going to do. For the next hour, Savannah outlined a strategy that was both methodical and devastating. I would gather evidence quietly while maintaining normal behavior. I would secure copies of all financial records. I would discreetly consult with a financial advisor to understand the full scope of our marital assets. And most importantly, I would wait for the perfect moment to serve him divorce papers. The element of surprise is critical, Savannah explained. Men like your husband, successful, controlling, accustomed to managing the narrative, they fall apart when blindsided. If he knows it's coming, he'll start hiding assets, building his own case, possibly even trying to undermine your business. I understand. Good. Now, about that $50,000 he transferred for your anniversary gift. She tapped her pen against her legal pad. What are you planning to do with it? I smiled for the first time since entering her office. Something memorable. As I left Savannah's office, the morning sun now fully illuminating the Chicago skyline, my phone buzzed with a text from Robert. Missing you this morning. Late night with the team but making progress. Can't wait for our anniversary. You're going to be so surprised. I texted back a heart emoji and nothing more, then called Zoe. I need you to book the rooftop at the aviary for next Saturday night. Private event, 50 guests maximum. For a client? She asked. No. For me. As I stepped into my car, I felt lighter than I had in years. The weight of perfection, of being Robert's flawless wife while he betrayed every vow we'd made, was lifting. In its place was something new, the crystalline clarity of a woman with nothing left to lose and everything to reclaim. Robert had no idea what was coming. But then again, neither had I. The next morning, Robert returned home while I was preparing breakfast, his overnight bag slung casually over his shoulder. He looked tired but satisfied, the face of a man who believed he was successfully managing 2 separate lives. Singapore team finally wrapped up around 2 a.m., he announced, dropping his bag by the kitchen island and pouring himself coffee from the carafe I'd prepared. Martin's pushing everyone to the breaking point on this one. I slid a plate of avocado toast toward him, his favorite weekend breakfast, and smiled. Well, I'm glad you're home now. I was thinking we could go to the art installation at Millennium Park today. The weather's perfect. He hesitated, taking a sip of his coffee. Actually, I promised to review some documents for Martin before Monday. Shouldn't take more than a few hours, though. Of course, I replied, maintaining my understanding wife facade while mentally adding this lie to my growing collection. I'll go to the farmer's market then. Maybe pick up something special for dinner. He reached across the island and squeezed my hand. You're the best, Miranda. Seriously. Most wives would complain about the hours I've been keeping lately. Most wives weren't planning their husband's professional and personal demise while maintaining a perfect smile. I squeezed his hand back. We're partners, Robert. Your success is our success. The irony nearly made me laugh out loud. As Robert retreated to his home office, I texted the number Savannah had given me yesterday, her recommended private investigator, Diane Winters. Ready to proceed. When can we meet? The response came almost immediately. Noon, Navy Pier Food Court. Where? Something casual. I spent the next 2 hours performing the role of devoted wife with Oscar-worthy precision. I brought Robert a fresh coffee at 10 a.m., asked his input on dinner plans, and even managed to laugh at his tired joke about Singapore's time difference, all while my mind calculated exactly how many hours I had before everything changed. At 11:30, I called up the stairs. Heading to the farmer's market, honey. Back in a couple hours. Bring back those cheese puffs from the French bakery, he responded, not bothering to come downstairs. Will do. I had dressed deliberately in yoga pants, an oversized Northwestern alumni sweatshirt, and large sunglasses, the uniform of affluent Chicago wives running weekend errands. Nothing that would draw attention or stick in anyone's memory. Navy Pier was crowded with weekend tourists, despite the early spring chill coming off Lake Michigan. I navigated through families posing for photos and couples walking hand in hand until I reached the food court. A tall woman with silver-streaked black hair pulled into a practical ponytail sat at a corner table, nursing a coffee and observing the crowds. She didn't look up as I approached, but I knew immediately she was Diane Winters. I sat across from her without speaking. She continued people-watching for another full minute before finally turning her attention to me. Order something, she said. her voice low and gravelly. "Blend in." I purchased a lemonade from the nearest stand and returned to the table. Only then did Diane place a slim manila folder between us. "Chen briefed me," she said, pushing the folder toward me with one finger. "This is my contract. 20,000 retainer. Results guaranteed or your money back." I didn't open the folder. "What kind of results?" "Documentation of extramarital affairs, including dates, times, locations, and photographic evidence. Financial. Irregularities, if any exist. Background on all involved parties." Her eyes, pale blue and assessing, studied my face. "Enough to bury him." "Time frame?" 2 weeks for preliminary findings, 4 for the complete package, expedited services available for an additional fee. I thought of the anniversary date rapidly. Approaching. "How expedited?" A thin smile. "How soon do you need it?" 3 days. She didn't blink. "Double the retainer." I nodded. "Done." Diane took a sip of her coffee. "Tell me everything you know about the affair. Names, locations, patterns." For the next 20 minutes, I shared everything I'd discovered and suspected. The regular, late meetings. The downtown apartment. The hotel reservation with Natalie. The unexplained expenses on our credit card statements that Robert always justified as client entertainment. Diane took no notes but listened intently, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When I finished, she nodded once. Initial assessment. "This isn't his first affair." The words hit harder than I expected. "What makes you say that?" "Too comfortable with the logistics. Too many systems in place. The separate apartment access, the ease of lying." She shrugged. "First-timers make mistakes, get sloppy. Your husband sounds like he's been running this playbook for years." Years. The word echoed in my head as I thought back over our marriage. How many business trips had actually been covers for assignations? How many late nights at the office had been spent in hotel rooms with other women? "That changes nothing," I said finally, my voice steadier than I felt. "I just need proof of this affair." Diane nodded approvingly. "Good. Emotions cloud judgment. Stick with facts." She slid a burner phone across the table. "My updates come to this. Nowhere else. No texts to your regular phone, no emails, no calls that he might overhear." I pocketed the phone. "Understood." "One more thing." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Your husband is wealthy, connected, and has everything to lose. Men like that can become dangerous when cornered. Are you sure you want to proceed?" I thought of the email I'd read, of Robert's easy lies over breakfast, of the decade I'd spent supporting his ambitions while he betrayed mine. "I'm sure." "Then we start tonight. Go home, act normal. Wait." As I left Navy Pier, the burner phone felt like a grenade in my pocket, powerful, dangerous, and impossible to ignore. Yet alongside the anxiety was something else, a growing sense of power. For years, Robert had maintained control of our narrative. Now I was writing a different ending. I spent the afternoon performing the role of perfect wife with renewed commitment. I returned from the farmer's market with the requested cheese puffs and fresh flowers for the dining table. I prepared Robert's favorite pasta dish for dinner. I laughed at his complaints about Martin's impossible demands and commiserated about the challenges of the Singapore merger. All while the burner phone in my pocket represented the ticking countdown to the end of our marriage. After dinner, Robert's phone chimed with a text. He checked it, frowned slightly, then began composing a response. "Everything okay?" I asked, pouring us both more wine. "Just Martin," he replied without looking up. "Needs me to review something before tomorrow's call with Singapore." Another lie. I recognized the particular frown he'd made, not annoyed but slightly concerned, the look he got when plans changed unexpectedly. I wondered if Natalie had texted him, perhaps changing their meeting time or location. On a Saturday night? That man works you too hard. I kept my voice light, sympathetic. Robert drained his wine glass. I know, but this merger could mean partnership. A few more weeks of craziness, and then things will calm down. He stood, dropping a kiss on the top of my head. I need to go to the office for a bit. Don't wait up. The actual office? Not the downtown apartment? I asked, maintaining a casual tone. He hesitated for a microsecond. The apartment doesn't have some files I need. I'll probably end up there later tonight, though. Of course. I smiled up at him. Drive safely. 20 minutes after Robert left, the burner phone vibrated in my pocket. A text from Diane. Subject leaving residence. Surveillance initiated. I replied with a single word. Confirmed. Then I went to work. First, I called Zoe to check on the progress of my mysterious event planning. I've secured the aviary for next Saturday, she reported. They were booked, but when I mentioned it was for you personally, the manager made an exception. Apparently, your work on their New Year's Eve event left quite an impression. Perfect. Now I need you to create a guest list. Start with my close friends, Jenna, Sophia, Derek. Then add the following people from my business contact list. I rattled off names of clients who had become friends over the years, women who had hired me for their corporate events and stayed in touch afterward. That's about 20 people so far, Zoe noted. You said 50 maximum? Add Robert's sister, Catherine, and his colleague, Parker Thomas, the one who brought his husband to the Christmas party last year. Robert's sister? Miranda, what exactly is this event? I'll explain everything soon. Just trust me. And Zoe? Don't mention this to anyone, especially not Robert. After hanging up, I moved to Robert's home office. I knew he kept it locked when he wasn't home, a practice he'd started 3 years ago claiming client confidentiality. But what Robert didn't know was that I'd made a copy of the key the day he'd installed the new lock. Inside, everything was meticulously organized. Robert had always been particular about his workspace. Files arranged by client name, pens aligned perfectly on the blotter, computer screen positioned at exactly the right angle. I didn't disturb anything as I photographed the contents of his filing cabinet, focusing particularly on financial documents and anything marked personal or confidential. Next, I turned to his desktop computer. It was password protected, of course, but I'd observed him entering the code enough times to know it was his mother's birthday, followed by his college jersey number. Predictable. Once inside, I attached a small flash drive Savannah had given me, which automatically copied his browser history, recent documents, and email archives. It took less than 5 minutes, a tiny insurance policy against whatever denials would come later. As I was about to leave, a notification popped up on his screen. An incoming email from Natalie Brooks with the subject line, Friday Arrangements. I hesitated, tempted to read it, but decided against it. Diane would obtain more concrete evidence than scattered emails, and I couldn't risk Robert discovering I'd accessed his computer. I locked the office behind me, leaving everything exactly as I'd found it, and returned to the living room just as the burner phone vibrated again. Subject at Hotel Indigo. Meeting female, approximately 35, blonde. Entering elevator together. Didn't reply this time. Instead, I poured myself another glass of wine and opened my laptop, navigating to our joint investment portfolio. Robert handled most of our investments, assuring me he was growing our wealth with his financial expertise. I'd trusted him, reviewing the quarterly statements he prepared but never digging deeper. That trust had been my first mistake. Now I examined every transaction from the past 6 months, noting patterns that had escaped my casual reviews. Small. Withdrawals, just under $10,000 each, the threshold for triggering bank reporting requirements, occurring roughly twice a month. Transfers to accounts I didn't recognize. Stock purchases in companies I'd never heard of, followed by quick sales at slight losses. By midnight, I had compiled a spreadsheet of questionable transactions totaling just over $200,000. Money that had disappeared from our joint portfolio, presumably into accounts only Robert controlled. The burner phone buzzed one last time before I went to bed. Evidence secured. Subject remains at hotel. Updates tomorrow. I slept surprisingly well that night, alone in our king-sized bed, surrounded by Egyptian cotton sheets Robert had insisted on importing directly from London. When morning came, I was awakened by the sound of his key in the front door. I glanced. At the clock, 7:30 a.m. I remained in bed, listening as he moved quietly through the house, stopping in the kitchen, coffee most likely, then heading up the stairs. I closed my eyes as he entered the bedroom, pretending to be asleep as he undressed and slipped into bed beside me. "Miranda?" he whispered, his hand on my shoulder. "You awake?" I made a show of stirring slowly, blinking up at him in the morning light. What time is it?" "Early. Sorry I didn't make it home last night. The Singapore situation is a nightmare." I rolled toward him, noting the faint scent of unfamiliar perfume beneath his hastily applied cologne. "You work too hard," he pulled me against his chest, his hand stroking my hair. "It'll all be worth it soon. The partnership, the bonuses, everything we've been working toward, everything he'd been working toward," he meant. My career success had always been secondary in Robert's grand plan, a pleasant addition to his narrative of success, but never the main plot. "I know," I murmured against his chest, allowing him to believe I was still the same trusting wife he'd left yesterday evening. "I'm proud of you." He fell asleep holding me, his breathing deep and untroubled. The sleep of a man who believed his secrets were safe. I lay awake beside him, watching the sunlight create patterns on our bedroom ceiling, mentally calculating exactly how many more nights I would spend in this bed, in this house, in this marriage. The number was smaller than Robert could possibly imagine. 2 days until our anniversary. 2 days until Robert's planned surprise. Whatever extravagant gesture he'd arranged to compensate for his infidelity, perhaps even to alleviate his own guilt. Sunday passed in domestic tranquility, a masterclass in marital deception from both sides. Robert spent hours catching up on work in his office while I finalized details for what I was now mentally calling my liberation celebration, rather than a divorce party. The term felt more empowering, less bitter. Monday morning arrived with new evidence from Diane. The burner phone vibrated at precisely 6 a.m. before Robert's alarm was set to go off. Full report ready. Financial irregularities confirmed. Meeting at noon, same location. I deleted the message and slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Robert. In the kitchen, I prepared coffee and reviewed my schedule for the day. As CEO of my own company, I had the luxury of rearranging my calendar at will. I had cleared most of this week for strategic planning, which wasn't entirely untrue. Robert appeared at 7 a.m. dressed in his power suit, charcoal gray Tom Ford, crisp white shirt, the blue tie I'd given him last Christmas. The irony wasn't lost on me. "Big day?" I asked, sliding an espresso across the counter. "Meetings with the Singapore team, finally in person." He checked his watch. The Patek Philippe I'd saved for 3 months to buy him on our 5th anniversary. "I'll be home late." "Of course." I leaned up to kiss his cheek, playing my part flawlessly. "Good luck." After Robert left, I called Catherine, his sister, and the only member of his family I'd ever truly connected with. Unlike the rest of the Hayes clan, with their old money pretensions and barely concealed disdain for my middle-class background, Catherine had always treated me with genuine warmth. "Miranda, I was just thinking about you two. The big anniversary is tomorrow, right? 10 years. I can hardly believe it." I took a deep breath. "Catherine, I need to see you. Today. It's important." A pause. "This doesn't sound like anniversary. Planning." "It's not. Please, can you meet me for lunch?" I have patience until 2, but I could do a late lunch after that. Perfect. Mariposa at 2:30? And Catherine, don't mention this to Robert. Another pause. Longer this time. I'll be there. At noon, I met Diane at Navy Pier as arranged. This time, she arrived with a leather portfolio and a USB drive. Everything's here, she said without preamble, sliding both across the table. Photographic evidence, date-stamped. Hotel receipts, restaurant charges. A timeline going back 6 months. 6 months? That's as far as I could confirm with concrete evidence in the expedited time frame. My suspicion? It's been going on much longer. I opened the portfolio, steeling myself for what I'd find. The first photograph showed Robert and a slim blonde woman entering Hotel Indigo. The next captured them at dinner, his hand covering hers on the table. The third, most damning of all, showed them kissing in the hotel elevator, his hand possessively cupping her backside. Who is she? I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. Natalie Brooks, 34. Junior associate at Meridian Partners. Met your husband during last year's Chicago Finance Forum. Currently lives in Streeterville, never married, no children, a junior associate at a rival firm. The professional impropriety almost bothered me more than the personal betrayal. The financial records? I asked, closing the portfolio. On the drive, offshore account in the Caymans, about $300,000 funneled there over the past year, plus a separate apartment in her building under an LLC. He's been paying the rent since February. A separate apartment. Not just hotel meetings, but a dedicated space for their affair. My hands clenched involuntarily. The good news, Diane continued, is that the money trails are clear. Nothing particularly sophisticated about his methods. Your attorney will have a field day. Thank you, I said, placing the portfolio and drive in my bag. You'll have the rest of your payment by end of day. Diane nodded. One more thing. I took the liberty of checking his calendar. She slid a piece of paper across the table. His anniversary surprise. Thought you should know. I unfolded the paper and felt a cold rage wash over me. Printed there was a confirmation for a private yacht rental. Not for me, but for Robert Hayes and guest, scheduled for tomorrow evening, our anniversary. He was planning to spend our 10th anniversary with her. If you need anything else, Diane said, standing, you know how to reach me. I sat alone for several minutes after she left, processing everything. Then I called Savannah. I have the evidence. Complete documentation of the affair and financial. Misconduct. Excellent. Bring it to my office this afternoon. We can file first thing tomorrow. No, I said firmly. Not tomorrow. Wednesday. Your anniversary, she acknowledged. You're sure you want to wait? Absolutely. I want one more day of him thinking he's gotten away with everything. At 2:30, I met Catherine at Mariposa, an upscale Mexican restaurant far from Robert's office, or usual haunts. She was already seated when I arrived, her expression concerned. Miranda, what's going on? You look different. I ordered a margarita before responding. Robert is having an affair. Catherine's face crumpled. Oh, Miranda, no. Yes, I have proof. I showed her a single photograph from Diane's portfolio. Robert kissing Natalie in the elevator. Catherine stared at it, shock giving way to anger. That absolute bastard. There's more, I continued. He's been moving money offshore. And he's planning to spend our anniversary with her tomorrow night. What are you going to do? Divorce him. But first, I'm throwing a party. I explained my plan for Saturday night at the aviary, watching Catherine's expression shift from confusion to understanding to grim approval. You want me there? Won't that be awkward? I'm his sister. That's precisely why I want you there. You're family to me, Catherine. More than he is now. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Just tell me what you need. There's one more thing. I hesitated. Robert's friend Parker. They went to college together. I think he might know about the affair. Catherine's eyebrows rose. Parker? No way. He worships you. If he knew Robert was cheating, he would have told you. I'm not so sure. He's been acting strange around me, avoiding eye contact, making excuses to leave when I enter the room. That doesn't sound like Parker. Catherine frowned. He values loyalty above everything, which is why I need to know if his loyalty is to me or to Robert. I left my meeting with Catherine feeling simultaneously exhausted and energized. The weight of secrets was heavy, but the prospect of freedom was intoxicating. Back home, I transferred $20,000 to Diane from my business account, the remainder of her fee. Then I called Zoe. I need you to add something special to Saturday's event, a video presentation. What kind of video? I'll have the content to you tomorrow. Just make sure we have the technical capability for a high-definition presentation, with excellent audio. That evening, Robert called to say he'd be working late again. I expressed appropriate disappointment and reminded him about our anniversary the next day. Don't worry, he assured me, his voice warm with false sincerity. I haven't forgotten. I have something special planned. I can't wait, I replied, matching his tone perfectly. 10 years is a big milestone. After hanging up, I opened my laptop and began composing a series of emails to my accountant, to our bank, to our investment broker. Each communication was carefully worded, establishing paper trails and freezing various aspects of our financial entanglements. Then I drafted the most important email of all, a message to Robert's entire contact list, including his colleagues, clients, friends, and family members, with the subject line, an important announcement from Miranda Hayes. I didn't send it yet, that would come later, but having it ready gave me a sense of control. Finally, I opened the folder containing the photographs Diane had provided. With methodical precision, I selected the most damning images and created a simple but devastating slideshow set to the song that had played during our first dance at our wedding. The juxtaposition of romantic music against images of betrayal felt appropriately sardonic. This would be the centerpiece of Saturday's event, my liberation celebration. As I worked into the night, the burner phone vibrated one last time. Subject: currently at secondary apartment with companion. Estimated return to primary residence, not tonight. I texted back, final report received, thank you for your services. Then I went to our bedroom and packed a small suitcase with essentials. Tonight would be my last night in this house, though Robert didn't know that yet. Tomorrow, after he left for work, I would move my remaining belongings to the luxury hotel suite I'd already booked for the next week. Our 10th anniversary would mark the end of our marriage, not its celebration. But only one of us knew that. I drifted off to sleep in our empty bed. I felt strangely peaceful. The hardest part, discovery, confirmation, decision, was behind me. What remained was execution, and that had always been my professional strength. Tomorrow, Robert would go about his day, anticipating an evening with his mistress on our anniversary. The day after, he would return home to divorce papers and an empty house. And on Saturday, I would host the event of the season, a divorce party funded entirely by the money he'd set aside for our anniversary gift. The symmetry felt like justice. Our 10th anniversary dawned bright and clear, a perfect spring day in Chicago. I awoke alone in our bed, having slept surprisingly well for someone about to dismantle a decade of marriage. Robert had texted late the previous night. Breakthrough with Singapore team. Staying downtown to finalize details. Can't wait to see you tomorrow for our special night. Love you. His lies had become so routine they were almost comical. I knew exactly where he was sleeping, and it had nothing to do with Singapore. I replied, with deliberate enthusiasm. So proud of you. Can't wait for tonight. Love you too. By 8 a.m., I had my suitcase in the car and was making a final sweep of the house for anything I couldn't bear to leave behind. Most of my truly important possessions, family photographs, my grandmother's jewelry, irreplaceable mementos, were already secured in a safe deposit box Savannah had helped me arrange. I paused in Robert's office, tempted to leave some sign that I'd discovered everything. A printed photo of him and Natalie, perhaps, or a note on his computer screen. But Savannah's advice echoed in my mind. Don't give him any warning. The element of surprise is your greatest advantage. Instead, I took one last look around the house we'd shared for 8 years. The furniture we'd selected together. The art we'd collected during vacations. The kitchen where we'd hosted countless dinner parties. All of it suddenly felt like props on a stage set, the physical manifestation of a marriage that had been more performance than partnership. As I locked the front door behind me, I realized I felt no sadness, only a strange sense of lightness. I was leaving behind not just a house, but a role I'd been playing for far too long. My first stop was Savannah's office, where I delivered Diane's complete file of evidence. For over an hour, we reviewed the documentation, preparing the petition for divorce that would be filed the following morning. "This is exceptionally thorough," Savannah remarked, examining the financial records. "The offshore accounts alone would be enough to trigger the infidelity clause, even without the photographic evidence." "So we're in good shape?" "Miranda, we're in excellent shape. He's violated your prenup in multiple ways. Between the infidelity clause and the financial misconduct, you're looking at a very favorable settlement." I nodded, a practical question forming. "What about the $50,000 he transferred for the anniversary?" "Technically, it's in our joint account." Savannah smiled. "Marital funds. You have every right to use them, especially since he clearly had no intention of using them for their stated purpose." She closed the file with a decisive snap. "Speaking of which, how are plans for your event coming along?" "Everything's arranged. The aviary is confirmed for Saturday night. Invitations went out yesterday. Digital only, nothing traceable. Catering, decorations, music, all set." "And Robert knows nothing?" "Absolutely nothing." I checked my watch. "Right now, he thinks he's taking Natalie on a private yacht cruise tonight while I wait at home for an anniversary surprise that will never come." Savannah's expression softened slightly. "Are you certain you want to go through with the party?" "Many clients find the public aspect of divorce emotionally challenging." "This isn't about public spectacle," I explained. "It's about reclaiming my narrative. For years, I've been the supportive wife, the perfect hostess, the woman who stood 2 steps behind Robert while he built his career. Saturday night is about stepping into my own spotlight." She nodded, understanding in her eyes. Then I look forward to my invitation. From Savannah's office, I drove to the Peninsula Hotel, where I'd booked a suite for the next week. As I checked in, my phone chimed with a text from Robert. "Meeting running long. We'll pick you up at 7 for our surprise." "Wear something fancy." I smiled at the predictability of his deception. He had no intention of picking me up at 7. According to his reservation, the yacht was scheduled to depart at 6:30 p.m. Just enough time for him to be well offshore with Natalie by the time I would theoretically start wondering where he was. Replied, "Can't wait. Should I pack an overnight bag?" His response came quickly. "No need. Everything's taken care of." Of course it was, just not for me. After settling into my suite, I met with Zoe in the hotel lounge to finalize details for Saturday's event. "Invitations have been accepted by 37 people so far," she reported, scrolling through her tablet. "Including Catherine Hayes and Parker Thomas as you requested. The video setup is confirmed. We'll have a large screen and premium sound system." Perfect. I sipped my sparkling water, noting the time. 2 p.m. 5 hours until Robert's supposed pickup time. "What about the special items I requested?" Zoe's professional composure cracked slightly. "The custom cake is confirmed. The, anatomically correct decoration has been challenging for the baker, but they've assured me it will be tasteful." I laughed. A genuine laugh, the first in days. "As tasteful as a divorce party cake can be, I suppose." Miranda, Zoe said carefully, "I've worked for you for 5 years, and I've never seen you like this. Are you sure you're okay?" I considered the question seriously. I'm not okay in the conventional sense. My marriage is over. My husband has been betraying me for who knows how long. I'm about to become the subject of gossip throughout Chicago's financial district. I set down my glass. But I'm also more myself than I've been in years. So yes, in the ways that matter, I'm okay. Zoe nodded, satisfied with my answer. Then let's make this the best divorce party Chicago has ever seen. By 6 p.m., I was alone in my hotel suite, dressed in the Valentino gown Robert had always loved, a deep midnight blue that emphasized my eyes and complemented my dark hair. I'd arranged myself on the sofa with a glass of champagne and a carefully composed expression of anticipation, as if actually waiting for my husband to arrive. At 6:45, I snapped a selfie capturing the image of the devoted wife ready for her anniversary surprise. At 7:15, I took another, this time with a slightly concerned expression. At 7:30, a third, now showing visible worry. At 7:45, I called Robert. The call went directly to voicemail. "Honey, it's me," I said, injecting exactly the right note of confusion and concern into my voice. "It's 7:45. I'm ready for our anniversary surprise, but you're not here. Call me back, please." I texted both his personal and work phones. "Robert, where are you? Getting worried." Then I called Catherine, who answered immediately, playing her role perfectly. "Miranda? What's wrong?" "Catherine, I can't find Robert. He was supposed to pick me up at 7 for our anniversary surprise, but he's almost an hour late, and he's not answering his phone. That's strange. Have you called his office?" "Yes, no answer. I'm really starting to worry." "I'm sure there's an explanation," Catherine soothed. "Maybe his phone died, or he got caught in traffic." "Maybe," I said, allowing my voice to tremble. "Slightly. But it's our anniversary. He wouldn't just forget." "Of course not. Listen, why don't I make some calls? I'll reach out to some of his friends, see if anyone's heard from him." "Would you?" "Thank you, Catherine." After hanging up, I sent one more text to Robert, this time with a different tone. "Robert, I'm seriously worried. If I don't hear from you in the next hour, I'm calling hospitals." Then I settled back with my champagne and waited for the performance to unfold. At 9:15, as the yacht cruise would be ending, my phone finally rang. Robert's name flashed on the screen. I counted to 3 before answering, pitching my voice high, with relief. "Robert? Oh my God, where have you been? I've been so worried." "Miranda," he said, his voice a masterclass in contrition. "I am so sorry. There was an emergency with the Singapore deal. Complete disaster. Martin called an all-hands crisis meeting, no warning. My phone died, and I was stuck in the conference room for hours. On our anniversary?" I allowed disbelief and hurt to color my tone. I know. I feel terrible. But I promise I'll make it up to you. The surprise can happen tomorrow instead. It will be even better." "Tomorrow?" I sniffled convincingly. "Robert, this was supposed to be special. 10 years. And it will be special, I swear. Just tomorrow. Okay? I'm heading home now. Wait up for me?" "I'm not at home," I said, injecting confusion into my voice. "You told me to be ready at 7. I've been sitting in this dress for hours." A pause. "Right, of course. Where are you?" "The peninsula. I thought you were taking me somewhere from here." Another pause, longer this time, as he recalibrated his lie. "That was supposed to be part of the surprise. Look, stay there. I'll come to you. We can have a late dinner at the hotel, start our celebration tonight." "Okay," I said softly. "I'll be here." After hanging up, I checked the yacht tracking app I'd installed earlier. The private vessel Robert had chartered was indeed returning. To dock. Right on schedule. I wondered if Natalie had enjoyed her anniversary cruise. Within the hour, Robert would arrive at the peninsula, expecting to find his gullible wife waiting for comfort and reassurance. Instead, he would find an empty hotel lobby and a confused concierge with no record of a Miranda Hayes staying at the property. Let him panic. Let him call and text with no response. Let him experience a fraction of the anxiety his betrayal had caused me. Tomorrow, when he returned home, expecting to salvage his deception, he would find divorce papers waiting. And 3 days later, I would host a celebration of my freedom, paid for with the very money he'd set aside to maintain his elaborate lies. As I changed out of the Valentino gown into comfortable pajamas, I realized I was smiling. Not the practiced smile of Robert's perfect wife, but something more genuine. The smile of a woman who had finally stopped playing a role and started writing her own story. Morning arrived with a barrage of texts and missed calls from Robert. 27 attempts to reach me since I'd silenced my phone the night before. The messages progressed from confusion to concern to anger. 32 p.m. Miranda, I'm at the peninsula. Where are you? 10:45 p.m. Called the front desk. They have no record of you. What's going on? 11:15 p.m. This isn't funny. Call me. 12:03 a.m. Seriously worried. Where are you? 1:17 a.m. I've called everyone we know. No one has heard from you. 2:25 a.m. At home now. You're not here either. All your toiletries are gone. Call me. 3:40 a.m. What the hell is happening? 5:12 a.m. Whatever I did, we can fix this. Just tell me where you are. 6:58 a.m. Miranda, I'm begging you. Let me know you're safe. The last one, sent just 20 minutes ago, was more threatening. If I don't hear from you by noon, I'm filing a missing person report. I smiled at the hollow threat. Robert would never involve the police, not when his own activities wouldn't withstand scrutiny. I forwarded the entire thread to Savannah with a simple message. Proceeding as planned? Her response was immediate. Absolutely. Petition ready to file. Process server standing by. Today was the day. After 10 years of marriage and who knew how many instances of betrayal, today Robert would learn that his carefully constructed house of cards was collapsing. I showered and dressed with deliberate care, selecting a tailored white pantsuit that symbolized both business and beginning. Today wasn't just the end of my marriage. It was the start of my reclaimed life. At precisely 10 a.m., I called Robert. He answered on the first ring, his voice frantic. Miranda, thank God. Where are you? Are you okay? I'm fine, Robert. My voice was calm, detached. I've simply decided to move out. A beat of silence. Move? Out? What are you talking about? Why would you? I know about Natalie. 2 more beats of silence. I could almost see him calculating, deciding which lie to deploy. Natalie? I don't know what you're... Stop. The single word cut through his deflection like a knife. I know everything. The affair, the offshore accounts, the separate apartment. Your plans to spend our anniversary with her on a yacht while I sat at home waiting for a surprise that would never come. His breathing changed, becoming shallow and quick. Miranda, I can explain. I'm sure you can. You're very good at explanations, Robert. Very good at crafting narratives that benefit you while leaving collateral damage in your wake. Please, he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. Just tell me where you are. We can talk about this. There's nothing to talk about. My attorney will be filing divorce papers this morning. You should be served by noon. Your attorney? His voice rose an octave. You've already involved lawyers? Without even giving me a chance to explain? I've given you 10 years of chances, Robert. 10 years of trusting you, supporting you, building a life with you. And how many of those years have you been unfaithful? Silence again. That's what I thought. I continued. Don't bother going to the office today. Go home and wait for the papers. Read them carefully, especially the part about the infidelity clause in our prenup. Infidelity clause? His voice was suddenly hoarse. What infidelity clause? I allowed, myself a small, satisfied smile. The one that entitles me to 70% of our marital assets if you commit adultery. The one your family's attorney insisted on including, ironically enough. That's impossible, he sputtered. I would have known. Would you? Did you even read the prenup before signing it? Or did you just assume it would protect you and penalize me? His silence was answer enough. Goodbye, Robert. Wait! The panic in his voice was almost gratifying. Miranda, please. I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. But 10 years. You can't just throw away 10 years without giving me a chance to make this right. I'm not throwing away anything, I replied calmly. I'm simply acknowledging what you already discarded. Our marriage has been over for a long time. I just didn't know it until now. One conversation, he pleaded. That's all I'm asking. Meet me somewhere, anywhere, before lawyers and papers make everything worse. I considered his request, weighing it against Savannah's advice to maintain distance. But there was a certain appeal to seeing his face when he realized how completely he'd lost control of the situation. Fine. One conversation. The Oak Room at the Drake Hotel. Noon. I'll be there, he promised, relief evident in his voice. Thank you, Miranda. I ended the call and immediately texted Savannah. Change of plans. Meeting Robert at the Drake at noon. Delay service until after. Her response was cautious. Risky. He'll try to manipulate you. I know, I replied, but I want to see his face when he realizes it's over. The Drake Hotel was neutral territory, central, public, and suitably formal for what would essentially be a business meeting to dissolve our partnership. I arrived 15 minutes early, selecting a table in the corner of the Oak Room that offered both privacy and a clear line to the exit. Robert arrived at exactly noon, looking haggard in yesterday's suit, his normally perfect hair uncombed, dark circles under his eyes. He'd clearly spent the night searching for me rather than sleeping. Good. He rushed to the table, reaching for my hands. I withdrew them smoothly, gesturing to the chair across from me. Sit down, Robert. The authority in my voice seemed to startle him. For perhaps the first time in our relationship, he complied without question. Miranda, he began, his voice low and urgent. I know I've hurt you terribly. I've made the worst mistake of my life. But please believe me when I say Natalie meant nothing. It was just physical. A stupid, meaningless fling. A fling? I repeated flatly. Is that what you call a 6-month affair with a separate apartment? He blanched. How did you? I hired a private investigator. Very thorough. Excellent photographic evidence. He closed his eyes briefly, composing himself. When he opened them, his expression had shifted to the one he used to close difficult business deals. Earnest, slightly vulnerable, but ultimately confident. I won't insult you by denying it. Yes, I've been seeing Natalie. Yes, it was wrong. Unforgivably wrong. But Miranda, what we have, 10 years of building a life together, that's real. That matters. Does it? Because from where I'm sitting, it seems like our marriage has been a convenient cover for you. The perfect wife at home, the exciting mistress on the side. That's not fair, he protested. What we have is special. Natalie was just a mistake. One I'm prepared to end immediately. I leaned forward. You were with her last night, Robert. On a yacht, on our anniversary. His face crumpled. How can you possibly know that? Like I said, very thorough investigator. I picked up my water glass, studying him over the rim. Tell me, was that the plan all along? To take her on the cruise you booked with our anniversary budget, then manufacture some work emergency to explain your absence to me? Robert's silence was damning. That's what I thought. I set down my glass precisely on its coaster. You know what's interesting? Even now, when you're caught, when there's photographic evidence and financial records proving your betrayal, your instinct is still to lie, to minimize, to rewrite the narrative. "I'm trying to save our marriage," he insisted. "Doesn't that count for something?" "You're trying to save your reputation and your finances," I corrected. "The prenup's infidelity clause has you terrified." "This isn't about money? Isn't it? Then explain the offshore accounts. Explain the $300,000 you've been funneling away from our joint portfolio." He paled further. "That's for investments, opportunities that came up quickly. I was going to tell you more lies." I sighed, suddenly tired of the performance. "This conversation is pointless, Robert. Not because I can't forgive betrayal, though I can't, but because you're still lying. Even now, faced with incontrovertible evidence, you're creating fiction, rather than owning your choices." "What do you want from me?" Desperation tinged his voice. "Nothing. Not anymore." I stood, gathering my purse. "The papers will be waiting at the house. My attorney's contact information is included. Direct all future communication through her." He reached for my wrist, grabbing it with enough force to make me wince. "You can't do this. You can't just walk away from 10 years. I looked pointedly at his hand until he released me. "I'm not walking away from anything, Robert. I'm walking toward a life without deception. Without constantly questioning what's real and what's carefully crafted fiction. Miranda, please. Goodbye, Robert." As I walked away, he called after me, his voice carrying across the now silent restaurant. "This isn't over. You think you can humiliate me? Destroy everything we've built? I'll fight this every step of the way." I didn't turn around. He wanted a scene, wanted to provoke me into matching his emotional outburst. But that wasn't my style. Never had been. Outside, I texted Savannah. "Meeting over. He knows everything. Proceed with service." Her response was immediate. "Process server already waiting at your house." "How did he take it?" "Predictably," I replied. "Denied, minimized, then threatened. Make sure our security measures are in place." "Already done. Your home and office have additional surveillance. Hotel security has been notified not to allow him access to your suite." I slipped my phone back into my purse and walked the few blocks to the Chicago River, finding a quiet bench overlooking the water. For the first time in days, I allowed myself a moment of genuine emotion. I had loved Robert. Once. Truly loved him. Believed in our partnership, our shared dreams, our future together. At what point had that become a performance for him rather than a commitment? My phone buzzed with a text from Catherine. "Just heard from Robert. He's distraught. Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I replied. "Just left him at the Drake. He didn't take it well." No surprise there. Robert has never handled losing control gracefully. "Do you need company?" I considered her offer. "Not yet, but thank you for everything." "That's what family is for," she texted back. "The real kind, not the kind that betrays you." I smiled at her loyalty, then checked the time. Just past 1 p.m. By now, Robert would be returning home to find a process server waiting with divorce papers. By tonight, he would have contacted his own attorney, perhaps beginning to grasp the full legal and financial implications of his choices. And in less than 72 hours, I would be hosting a celebration of my liberation while he dealt with the wreckage of his carefully constructed double life. I took a deep breath of spring air, surprisingly clear by Chicago standards, and felt something unfamiliar. Peace. Not happiness, not yet. But the quiet certainty that I was reclaiming my life, one deliberate step at a time. The next morning, I awoke to a torrent of texts and voicemails, not just from Robert, whose messages had grown increasingly angry, but from mutual friends and acquaintances. Apparently, news of our impending divorce was spreading rapidly through our social circle. "Call me ASAP. Robert's telling everyone you're having a breakdown." Are you okay? Robert says you left without warning and won't speak to him. Heard about you and Robert. So sorry. Here if you need anything. Miranda, what's happening? Robert's at our house right now, absolutely wrecked. The last one was from Eleanor Williams, wife of Robert's colleague Michael. She and I had never been particularly close. She belonged more to the corporate wives contingent I'd always struggled to connect with, but her message concerned me. If Robert was at their house, he was undoubtedly crafting his version of events. I called Savannah before responding to anyone. We need to control the narrative, I said without preamble. Robert's already making the rounds, spinning this to make me look unstable. Classic move, Savannah replied, unsurprised. He's been served, by the way. Signed for the papers but refused to read them in front of the server. His attorney called me an hour ago. Gerald Hoffman. I grimaced. Hoffman was known for aggressive, often ugly divorce proceedings. That's not a good sign. It's exactly what I expected, Savannah countered. Men like Robert hire men like Hoffman when they're angry and want to intimidate. It won't work. She paused. But we do need to address the narrative issue. What are you thinking? I need to make a strategic appearance, somewhere public, where I'll be seen by the right people, looking perfectly put together and rational, not having a breakdown. Good. Thinking. And for the record, we included a non-disparagement clause in the divorce petition. If he continues spreading rumors, there will be financial consequences. After hanging up, I texted Catherine. Robert's at the Williams house, apparently wrecked. Any intel? Her response was quick. On it. Michael works with Parker. I'll get the real story. Next, I called Zoe to ensure the divorce party planning continued uninterrupted, despite the social media storm brewing. Everything's on track, she assured me. The aviary is confirmed, catering finalized. We're at 43 confirmed guests. The custom cake is spectacular. And the video presentation? Ready to go. We've tested the system twice. Perfect audio and visual quality. Good. One change. I want to add a personal address. Nothing long, just a few minutes at the beginning of the evening. Of course, I'll adjust the timeline. Zoe hesitated. Miranda, there's something you should know. Robert called the office this morning, asking for your schedule. My spine stiffened. What did you tell him? That all your appointments are confidential and I couldn't disclose anything. He wasn't happy. I'm sure he wasn't. If he calls again, refer him to Savannah. After arranging my strategic public appearance, lunch at Le Colonial, where the wives of Robert's colleagues often gathered on Thursdays, I spent the morning reviewing my financial position with my accountant. Between my business assets, which were protected by the prenup, and my likely share of our marital property under the infidelity clause, I would emerge from the divorce more than financially secure. Your business valuation came in higher than expected, my accountant noted. Miranda Hayes Events is now worth approximately $3.2 million, impressive growth over the past 2 years. I allowed myself a small moment of pride. While Robert had been cultivating his affair, I'd been doubling my company's value through strategic partnerships and exclusive client relationships. What about the joint investment portfolio? I asked. That's more complicated. There's evidence of significant withdrawals, as you suspected. About 300,000 moved to offshore accounts. We've flagged these for your attorney. And the 50,000 for our anniversary. Still in the joint account. As your attorney probably told you, you're entitled to use those funds as you see fit. Perfect. I smiled, thinking of the elaborate event taking shape for Saturday night. I have plans for that money. At noon, I arrived at Le Colonial wearing a Stella McCartney dress in a soft coral that conveyed both confidence and approachability. My hair was freshly styled, my makeup flawless, my demeanor calm and collected. The opposite of a woman having a breakdown, I'd timed my arrival perfectly. Eleanor Williams and 3 other wives of Robert's colleagues were already seated at their usual table. Their conversation halted abruptly when I walked in, their expressions a mix of surprise and discomfort. I approached their table with a warm smile. "Ladies, lovely to see you." Eleanor recovered first. "Miranda, we didn't expect— given everything happening—" "You mean my divorce?" I kept my voice light but clear enough to carry to nearby tables. "Yes, unfortunate timing with our anniversary just yesterday. But these things happen when you discover your husband has been keeping a mistress in a separate apartment." 4 pairs of eyes widened simultaneously. I'd just detonated a bomb in their carefully maintained social order, not with anger or accusations, but with a simply stated fact. "Oh my God," breathed Samantha Peters, whose husband David worked directly under Robert. "Is that true?" "I'm afraid so, complete with photographic evidence and financial records." I signaled a waiter. "May I join you? I'd love to catch up." They shifted uncomfortably, but couldn't refuse without creating a scene. I took the open chair, ordered an iced tea, and turned back to them with a composed smile. "I want to apologize in advance for any awkwardness this creates for your husbands at work. I know Robert and I share many professional connections." "He was at our house until 2 this morning," Eleanor said, studying my face. "He said you left without explanation, that you might be having some kind of episode." I nodded sympathetically. "That must have been difficult for him to admit, that—" "I left because I discovered his affair. Much easier to suggest I'm unstable." The women exchanged glances, clearly recalibrating their understanding of the situation. "How are you so calm?" Samantha asked. "Pragmatism," I replied simply. 10 years is a significant investment, but not worth extending when the partnership has been violated so completely. The conversation that followed was a masterclass in strategic information deployment. Without ever raising my voice or appearing bitter, I shared just enough details about Robert's betrayal to ensure the correct version of events would circulate through our social circle. Not the salacious particulars. Those would come at Saturday's event, but enough to counter Robert's breakdown narrative. By the time we finished lunch, all 4 women had shifted from wary discomfort to expressions of support. Eleanor even hugged me as we parted, whispering, "I always thought Robert was too smooth to be trusted. Michael will hear the truth from me, not him." Mission accomplished. My phone buzzed as I left the restaurant. A text from Catherine. "Robert spent the night getting drunk at the Williams house, trying to convince Michael and David you're having a midlife crisis. Left this morning to meet Hoffman. Also, Parker just called me. He needs to talk to you. Urgently." I frowned at the last part. Why would Parker Thomas, Robert's college friend and longtime colleague, need to speak with me urgently? "Did Parker say what it's about?" I texted back. "No, but he sounded worried. I think he knows something." I considered the possibilities. Parker had always been friendly but slightly reserved around me. He attended our dinner parties with his husband, laughed at Robert's jokes, but sometimes I'd caught him watching me, with an odd expression, something between guilt and concern. Give him my number, I decided, but tell him I'm only available to talk today. 20 minutes later, as I was returning to my hotel suite, Parker called. "Miranda," he began, his voice tight with anxiety. "Thank you for speaking with me. I know this must be an incredibly difficult time." "It's certainly been eventful," I replied neutrally. "Catherine said you needed to talk?" He exhaled heavily. "Yes. This isn't easy. But I need to tell you something about Robert. Something I should have told you a long time ago." My pulse quickened. "I'm listening." "Not over the phone. Could we meet? Somewhere private?" I hesitated, weighing the risk. Parker had been Robert's friend for over 20 years. This could be a trap, an attempt to gather information or create an opportunity for Robert to confront me. "I understand your hesitation," Parker said when I didn't immediately respond. "But this is important, Miranda. You need to know the full picture before Saturday. That caught my attention. Before Saturday? What do you know about Saturday? Another heavy sigh. Catherine told me about your event. I think it's brilliant, by the way. But there are things about Robert, about his past pattern, that might be relevant. Past pattern. The phrase sent a chill through me, confirming Diane's assessment that this wasn't Robert's first affair. The Peninsula lobby, I decided. 5 o'clock. Public enough to be safe, private enough to talk. I'll be there, Parker promised. And Miranda? I'm really sorry. About all of it. After hanging up, I called Savannah to update her on my conversation with Robert's colleagues' wives and the upcoming meeting with Parker. Be careful, she warned. This could be valuable intelligence, but it could also be a setup. Robert's desperate and angry, a dangerous combination. I'll keep it public and brief, I assured her. But if Parker has information about previous affairs, that could strengthen our case. Absolutely. Document everything he tells you. And Miranda, don't go anywhere alone with him, no matter what he says. At precisely 5 o'clock, I positioned myself in a corner of the Peninsula's elegant lobby, selecting a seating arrangement that gave me clear sightlines to all entrances and exits. Within minutes, Parker arrived, looking uncharacteristically, disheveled in rumpled business attire. He spotted me immediately, crossing the lobby with purpose. As he approached, I studied his face, searching for signs of deception or collusion. Instead, I saw only exhaustion and what appeared to be genuine remorse. Miranda, he said, taking the seat across from me. Thank you for meeting me. You said it was urgent, I replied, keeping my tone neutral. He nodded, glancing around to ensure we wouldn't be overheard. It is. I need to tell you about Natalie, and about Claire, and Jessica. I felt a cold weight settle in my stomach. Go on. Parker leaned forward, his voice low but clear. Robert's affairs didn't start with Natalie. There have been others. Many others. And I've helped him hide them from you. The elegant ambiance of the Peninsula lobby faded away as Parker's words. Registered, many others. And I've helped him hide them. I maintained my composure, though my fingers tightened imperceptibly around my water glass. Explain. Parker rubbed his temples, the gesture of a man carrying a burden he was eager to shed. It started about 3 years into your marriage, a client relations executive at Morgan Stanley. That lasted 6 months. Claire? I prompted, remembering the name he'd mentioned. Claire came later, about 4 years ago. She worked at the country club. That was almost a year. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Jessica was last year, a flight attendant he met on his trips to New York. Each name felt like a separate betrayal, a confirmation that the marriage I thought I'd been nurturing had been a fiction far longer than I'd imagined. And Natalie? My voice remained steady. 6 months, like Diane told you. But she's different. Robert's invested in her. Emotionally, I mean. The others were just physical. I arched an eyebrow. Is that supposed to make me feel better? No. Parker looked genuinely remorseful. Nothing could make this better. That's why I'm here. Why now, Parker? You've known about his infidelities for years. Why come forward the day after I file for divorce? He shifted uncomfortably. Guilt, partly, but also... He hesitated. Also what? Robert's planning something. He met with Hoffman this morning, and afterward he called me, ranting about how he'd destroy you before letting you take his money. He mentioned your business specifically. A chill ran through me despite the lobby's warm temperature. Destroy? Me how? I don't know exactly, but I've seen Robert angry before and it's never pretty. He can't stand losing, especially not to someone he underestimated. That rang true. Robert's competitive nature had always been evident, even in trivial matters like board games or tennis matches. In business, he was known for aggressive tactics when deals didn't go his way. Why are you telling me this? You've been his friend for 20 years. Parker looked down at his hands. Mark, my husband, he's been telling me for years that my loyalty to Robert was misplaced. That covering for his affairs made me complicit. He sighed deeply. When I heard what you were planning for Saturday, something clicked. Mark was right. I've been protecting the wrong person. I studied him carefully, searching for signs of deception. What exactly did Robert say about my business? That you'd built it using his connections. That without him, you'd never have landed the major clients that made it successful. Parker grimaced. He's planning to contact your biggest clients, tell them you're unstable, unreliable. Despite myself, I laughed. That's his plan? To badmouth me to my clients. Clients who chose me because of my reliability and attention to detail? Parker looked surprised at my reaction. You're not worried? About my professional reputation? No. I built my business through excellent service and results, not through Robert's connections. I leaned forward. But I am concerned about what else he might attempt. Anything more specific than vague threats? Parker hesitated again. He mentioned something about financial irregularities at your company, said if you pushed him on the divorce terms, he'd make sure the IRS took a very close look at your books. Now that was concerning. Not because there were any irregularities, my accounting was meticulous, but because even baseless accusations could trigger audits and investigations that would damage client confidence. Is that all? For now. But Miranda, I've known Robert since college. When he feels cornered, he fights dirty. Parker reached into his jacket and withdrew a flash drive. This has everything. Dates, locations, messages between Robert and me, about the arrangements, even some photos he sent me, stupidly enough. I took the drive, tucking it into my purse. Why should I trust this? Or you? You shouldn't, he admitted. I've been a terrible friend to you for years, but I'm trying to make it right. He stood to leave, then hesitated. One more thing. Robert doesn't know about Saturday yet. But Hoffman has someone watching you. They followed you to La Colonial earlier. That was unsettling news. Thank you for the warning. After Parker left, I remained in the lobby, processing what I'd learned. The scope of Robert's betrayal was far greater than I'd imagined. Not one affair, but a pattern of infidelity stretching back nearly our entire marriage. And now he was plotting some form of retaliation. I called Savannah immediately, arranging to meet her at her office within the hour. On the drive over, I made 2 more calls. The first to my company's accountant, instructing him to prepare for a potential IRS inquiry and to conduct a comprehensive review of all financial records as a preemptive measure. The second call was to Catherine. Parker just left, I told her. Apparently, your brother has been a serial cheater throughout our entire marriage. I wish I could say I'm surprised, she replied, her voice tight with anger. Our father was the same way. Mother just looked the other way. Well, I won't be looking the other way, and now Robert's threatening to come after my business. I explained what Parker had shared. That sounds like Robert, Catherine agreed. He can't stand losing control of the narrative. I need a favor, I said. A big one. Anything. I need you to get close to Robert. Pretend you're sympathetic to his side. See what else he's planning. Catherine didn't hesitate. Consider it done. I'll call him tonight. Play the concerned sister. He always confides in me when he thinks I'm on his side. By the time I reached Savannah's office, it was past 7, but she was waiting, looking, as fresh and composed as she had that morning. Tell me everything, she said as soon as I sat down. I recounted my conversation with Parker in detail, including Robert's history of affairs and his apparent plans for retaliation. Then I placed the flash drive on her desk. Evidence, I explained. If Parker is telling the truth. Savannah connected the drive to her computer, and we spent the next hour reviewing its contents. It was exactly as Parker had described. Text, messages, emails, even phone records documenting Robert's multiple affairs and Parker's role in facilitating them. This strengthens our case considerably, Savannah noted, copying the files to her secure server. Multiple affairs over years establishes a pattern of behavior that any judge would find reprehensible. What about his threats against my business? Concerning, but manageable. She made several notes on her legal pad. We'll file a temporary restraining order first thing tomorrow, prohibiting him from contacting your clients or making any defamatory statements about you or your company. Will that stop him? It creates serious legal consequences if he continues. And it sends a message that we're prepared for his tactics. She studied me thoughtfully. Are you still planning to go through with the event on Saturday? More than ever, I confirmed, but we need to adjust the presentation. With this new information, I want to make sure the narrative is completely accurate. Savannah nodded. Just be careful. Men like Robert can become dangerous when they feel truly cornered. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from Robert. We need to talk, tomorrow, alone, or things get very ugly very fast. I showed Savannah the message. Her expression hardened. Do not meet with him alone, no matter what he threatens. I won't, I assured her. But I do need to know what he's planning. Let Catherine handle that, Savannah advised. And meanwhile, we'll proceed with the TRO first thing tomorrow. I'm also going to assign a security consultant to review your arrangements for Saturday. By the time I returned to my hotel suite, it was nearly 10. I was physically and emotionally exhausted, but my mind was racing with the implications of Parker's revelations. My 10-year marriage had been built on a foundation of lies far more extensive than I'd initially discovered. As I prepared for bed, my phone buzzed with a text from Catherine. Just spoke with Robert. He's at his downtown apartment drinking. Heavily. Says he has information that will destroy you. Something about a client from 3 years ago? Name sounded like Bellman or Belmore? I frowned, trying to place the name. Belmore. Then it hit me. William Belmore, CEO of Belmore Industries, one of my first major clients. The event had been flawless, but Belmore himself had been problematic, making inappropriate advances toward me at the after-party, which I'd firmly rebuffed. Did he say what kind of information? I texted back. No, just that it would ruin your professional reputation. He's meeting Hoffman again tomorrow morning. This was potentially serious. What could Robert possibly have on my interaction with Belmore? I had handled the situation professionally and discreetly, never even mentioning it to Robert. I called Zoe despite the late hour. I need everything we have on the Belmore Industries event from 3 years ago. All communications, contracts, post-event reports, everything. That's quite a request at 10 p.m., Zoe replied, sounding understandably confused. Can I ask why? Robert's threatening to use something from that event against me. I need to know what he might have. I see. Zoe's tone shifted from confused to determined. I'll pull the files tonight and have them to you first thing tomorrow. Thank you. And Zoe? Be careful with your communications. Robert may be monitoring, more than we realize. After hanging up, I sent a final text to Savannah, updating her on this new development. Her response was immediate. Don't panic. Whatever he thinks he has, we'll counter it. Focus on tomorrow's TRO and finalizing Saturday's arrangements. I tried to follow her advice, forcing myself to go through my normal nighttime routine despite the anxiety building in my chest. As I applied my expensive night cream, another gift from Robert, ironically, I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. The woman looking back at me appeared calm, controlled, even elegant in her silk pajamas. Only the slight tightness around her eyes betrayed the storm of emotions beneath the surface. 3 days ago, I'd discovered my husband's affair. 2 days ago, I'd learned about the infidelity clause in our prenup. Yesterday, I'd filed for divorce. Today, I'd discovered his affairs had spanned our entire marriage. And tomorrow? Tomorrow, Robert would try to destroy the business I'd built with years of hard work and dedication. The business that represented my independence, my success apart from him. I finished my skincare routine with deliberate care, refusing to let the chaos he'd created disrupt even this small ritual. Then I returned to the bedroom, picked up my phone, and made one final call. Diane? It's Miranda Hayes. I need additional surveillance starting immediately. Not on Robert this time. On a man named William Belmore. If Robert wanted to play dirty, he would discover I was more than capable of fighting back. And unlike him, I would be fighting with the truth firmly on my side. Friday morning dawned gray and drizzly, matching my mood as I reviewed the Belmore Industries event files Zoe had sent over at 6 a.m. Everything appeared immaculate. Contracts properly executed, invoices paid on time, glowing post-event evaluations. Nothing that suggested any impropriety or potential ammunition for Robert, except for one email, buried in a folder labeled Personal Correspondence. A message from William Belmore sent at 2:17 a.m. after the event. Miranda, your rejection tonight was disappointing but understandable given your marital status. Perhaps we could continue our discussion in a more private setting? I have a suite at the Langham all weekend, discretion assured. My response had been polite but unambiguous. Mr. Belmore, I value our professional relationship, but I must decline your invitation. I look forward to working with Belmore Industries on future projects. That had been the end of our communication on the matter. I'd never mentioned the incident to anyone except Zoe, who had helped me ensure Belmore was never alone with me at subsequent events. What could Robert possibly have that would turn this into something damaging? My phone rang. Savannah. The TRO has been filed, she announced without preamble. Robert and Hoffman have been served. They can't contact your clients or make defamatory statements about you or your business without facing immediate legal consequences. Good, I replied, still staring at Belmore's email. But I'm concerned about this Belmore situation. I've reviewed the files, and there's nothing compromising. But Robert seems to think he has something. Let me guess. Belmore made a pass at you, you rejected him. And now Robert thinks he can spin it into something unseemly? Precisely. Classic misdirection. He's trying to put you on the defensive, make you worry about what he might have, so you'll back off on the divorce terms. Savannah's voice was calm, reassuring. Whatever he thinks he has, it's unlikely to be substantive. Focus on today's priorities, finalizing Saturday's arrangements, and preparing for any public encounters. With Robert. She was right, of course. But something about the situation still bothered me. Robert was many things, but he wasn't stupid. He wouldn't threaten to use information unless he believed it had real power. After hanging up, I called Diane for an update on her Belmore investigation. It's preliminary, she cautioned, but interesting. Belmore and Robert have met 3 times in the past month, most recently yesterday afternoon, right after Robert's meeting with Hoffman. That was concerning. Any idea what they discussed? Not yet, but I did discover something else. Belmore Industries is currently negotiating a major merger, one that Robert's firm is handling. The pieces began to click into place. Robert had leverage over Belmore through the merger deal. He could potentially pressure Belmore into making false claims about me, perhaps suggesting I had behaved inappropriately or unprofessionally. Keep digging, I instructed Diane. I need to know exactly what they're planning. A text arrived from Catherine. Robert's on the move, heading to Hoffman's office, then lunch with a client who owes him a favor. His words, Belmore, almost certainly. I needed to act quickly. I called William Belmore's office directly, bypassing his assistants by using the private line I'd been given for event planning. Miranda Hayes, he answered, surprise evident in his voice. This is unexpected. I'll be direct, Mr. Belmore. I know you've been meeting with my husband, who is currently engaged in divorce proceedings against me. I also know your merger is being handled by his firm. Silence stretched across the line before Belmore responded. I'm not sure what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. Another fact. I have our complete email correspondence from 3 years ago, including your inappropriate invitation and my professional rejection. More silence. Mr. Belmore, I value our business relationship. Belmore Industries has been an important client for my company, but I will not allow myself to be used as a pawn in my husband's vindictive games. Miranda, he began, his tone conciliatory. Robert approached me as a friend. He's very upset about the divorce. What exactly did he ask you to do? Belmore sighed heavily. He suggested I might recharacterize our interaction at that event, imply that you had been the one to behave inappropriately. And you agreed to this, knowing it was false? I didn't agree to anything, he protested. I told him I'd think about it. The merger is significant for us, Miranda. Your husband's firm has considerable influence over the terms. I understand business pressure, Mr. Belmore, but consider this. If you make false statements about me, I will be forced to release our actual correspondence. Additionally, I would have to inform the Sadr board of Belmore Industries about this attempt at character assassination. The threat was clear but legally defensible. I wasn't blackmailing him, merely stating consequences. What do you want from me? Belmore asked finally. Nothing. Conduct your business as you see fit, but know that I will defend my reputation with every resource at my disposal. After hanging up, I felt a surge of adrenaline. I'd just confronted one of Chicago's most powerful CEOs, a man whose company could have been a significant ongoing client for my business. But some things were more important than client relationships, like truth and personal dignity. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This isn't over. You have no idea what's coming. R. Robert, using a new phone to circumvent the TRO's communication restrictions. I forwarded the message to Savannah with a simple note. Violation of TRO? Her response was immediate. Absolutely. Documented and filed with the court. Each violation strengthens our case. The remainder of the morning passed in a flurry of activity. I met with Zoe to finalize details for Saturday's event, reviewed security arrangements with the firm Savannah had recommended, and fielded supportive messages from friends who had heard about the divorce. At noon, Catherine called. Robert just finished lunch with Belmore, she reported. He came out looking furious. I think your preemptive strike worked. Good. Has he mentioned the party yet? No, but he knows something's happening. He keeps asking mutual friends if they've heard from you. So far, everyone's staying quiet. What's his state of mind? Catherine hesitated. Not good. He's drinking heavily, making threats. He told Michael Williams that Miranda will regret the day she crossed me. Charming, I replied dryly, though the threat sent a chill through me. Where is he now? Heading back to Hoffman's office. They filed a response to your divorce petition this morning. Savannah probably has it already. Indeed, within the hour, Savannah forwarded Robert's official response. It was as aggressive as expected, denying the affair despite photographic evidence, claiming financial hardship despite his 7-figure salary, and most outrageously, suggesting that I had been the unfaithful party. Standard scorched earth tactics, Savannah assured me when I called. They're hoping to intimidate you into a quick, favorable settlement. It won't work. What's our next move? We proceed exactly as planned. The TRO protects your business interests. The evidence from Parker destroys Robert's credibility. And tomorrow night's event? She paused. Well, that's your masterstroke. By late afternoon, final preparations for the divorce party were complete. The guest list was confirmed at 47 attendees, including several of Robert's colleagues, his sister Catherine, and, most surprisingly, his mother, Eleanor Hayes, who had called me personally after hearing about the divorce. "I've suspected, for years," she had admitted quietly. "His father was the same way. I should have said something to you, warned you somehow." I had assured her that Robert's behavior wasn't her responsibility and invited her to the party, an invitation she had accepted with what sounded like grim satisfaction. As evening approached, I returned to my hotel suite to find a large bouquet of lilies, my favorite flowers, with a card that read simply, "For tomorrow, wear something unforgettable. See Catherine, thoughtful as always." I sent her a quick thank you text, then settled in for a quiet evening of preparation. Tomorrow would be anything but quiet. My phone rang just after 9. "Diane." "We may have a problem," she said without preamble. "Robert's been asking questions around town, trying to find out where you're staying, and he's been drinking heavily at Gibson's for the past 2 hours. The TRO prohibits him from contacting me directly," I pointed out. "True, but intoxicated men don't always remember legal restrictions. The security team at the peninsula has been alerted to deny him entry if he shows up." I thanked her for the warning, then double-checked that my suite door was securely locked. Robert had never been physically threatening during our marriage, but his recent behavior suggested a man rapidly unraveling. Just before midnight, as I was preparing for bed, my phone buzzed with a series of texts from Robert's number. "You think, you're so clever. Everyone will know the truth about you tomorrow. You won't get away with this." Each message was a clear violation of the TRO. I forwarded them to Savannah, then silenced my phone for the night. Whatever Robert was planning, I needed to be rested and clear-headed to face it. As I drifted toward sleep, I mentally reviewed the past 5 days. The discovery of Robert's affair, the revelation of his years-long pattern of infidelity, the tactics he'd employed to try to intimidate me. Each betrayal, each threat had only strengthened my resolve. Tomorrow, amid the elegant setting of the aviary's rooftop, surrounded by friends and even some of Robert's own family, I would reclaim my narrative completely. The party funded by Robert's anniversary gift budget would mark not just the end of my marriage, but the beginning of something new, a life without deception, without compromise, without the constant performance of being Robert Hayes's perfect wife. As consciousness faded, I smiled at the symmetry of it all. Robert had planned to celebrate our anniversary with his mistress while I waited at home, unaware and unimportant. Instead, I would be celebrating my liberation, surrounded by supporters, while he faced the consequences of his choices alone. Justice, it seemed, had a sense of poetry after all. Saturday morning, the day of my liberation celebration, I awoke feeling strangely calm, as if the turbulence of the past 5 days had finally settled into a clear, unwavering purpose. My phone, silenced, overnight displayed a dozen missed calls and texts when I finally checked it. Most were from Catherine, with increasing urgency. "Robert's gone off the deep end. He knows about the party. Someone told him. He's threatening to show up. I'm trying to calm him down. Call me ASAP." I dialed her immediately. "Thank God," she answered breathlessly. "I've been trying to reach you for hours." "What's happening?" "Parker accidentally let it slip about tonight. He mentioned it to his husband on the phone, and Robert overheard." Catherine's voice was tight with anxiety. "He's furious, Miranda. I've never seen him like this." "Where is he now?" "At his downtown apartment. I managed to convince him to let me come over. He's been drinking since dawn, ranting about how you're trying to humiliate him." "Am I on speaker?" I asked cautiously. "No, I'm in the bathroom." He thinks, I'm sympathetic to his side, but I'm worried, Miranda. He keeps saying he won't let you win, that he has one last card to play. My mind raced through possibilities. The Belmore angle had been neutralized. The TRO prevented him from contacting my clients. What else could he be planning? Has he mentioned anything specific? Just something about her party will be memorable, all right. I think he's planning to crash it, Miranda. Make a scene. That would be problematic but manageable. The aviary's security was excellent, and I'd hired additional personnel specifically. For tonight, keep him talking, I instructed. Try to find out what he's planning. And Catherine, be careful. If he realizes you're on my side, I know. I'll call you later. My next call was to Savannah, updating her on the situation and requesting a formal police presence at the event, just in case. Already arranged, she assured me. 2 plainclothes officers will be stationed at the entrance, and I've provided them with the TRO documentation. If Robert attempts to enter, he'll be detained immediately. With security concerns addressed, I turned my attention to final preparations. Today would be carefully choreographed: hair appointment at 11, manicure at 1, final dress fitting at 3, then to the aviary by 5 to oversee last-minute arrangements before guests arrived at 7. As I prepared to leave for my hair appointment, Diane called. "I've been monitoring Robert since yesterday," she reported. "He's definitely planning something for tonight. Made 3 calls to people not in his usual contact circle. 1 to a local news blogger who covers Chicago society events. 1 to someone named Jason Whitman at the Tribune. He's going to try to turn this into a media circus," I realized. "Make it look like I'm having some kind of public meltdown." "That's my assessment," Diane agreed. "But there's something else." The 3rd call was to Natalie Brooks. Lasted almost 30 minutes. She's been seen packing an overnight bag this morning. That was unexpected. Why would Robert involve his mistress? In tonight's situation? "Keep monitoring both of them," I instructed. "I need to know immediately if either approaches the aviary tonight." By mid-afternoon, I was at the final fitting for my dress, a stunning Ely Saab in deep emerald that managed to be both elegant and statement-making. As the seamstress made last-minute adjustments, Catherine called again. "He's in the shower," she whispered. I checked his phone. He's been texting with Natalie all day. They're planning to show up together tonight. Him in a tux, her in some red designer dress. He wants to make a dramatic entrance, confront you publicly. With his mistress on his arm? I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity. That's his master plan to salvage his reputation? He's not thinking clearly, Catherine replied. But there's more. He mentioned something about financial records, proof that you've been embezzling from clients. My amusement evaporated. That's completely false. I know that. But he seems convinced he has evidence. A cold realization dawned. The Belmore account. Robert handled some of our personal investments through the same firm that manages Belmore Industries' portfolio. He could have fabricated transactions to make it look like money moved between accounts. That sounds like something he'd do, Catherine agreed. What's your plan? Proceed exactly as scheduled, I decided. But alert Savannah about this new development. If Robert wants to make false accusations of financial impropriety, we'll be ready. After finishing at the seamstress, I went directly to the aviary, arriving just before 5 p.m. The rooftop had been transformed into an elegant oasis, understated decorations in silver and midnight blue, strategic lighting that enhanced the Chicago skyline backdrop, a small stage area for the video presentation and my planned address. Zoe met me at the entrance, tablet in hand. Everything's on schedule. Catering is setting up now. Bar staff arrives at 5:30. Security is already in position, including the 2 police officers. Any word from our potential party crashers? Nothing yet, but we've distributed their photos to all security personnel. I inspected the cake, a 3-tiered masterpiece in shimmering silver with one delightfully crude decoration. A small fondant figure of a man, face down in the frosting, with a heel print on his back. Tasteless? Perhaps. Satisfying? Absolutely. At 6:30, with guests due to arrive in 30 minutes, Savannah called. I've spoken with the officers and reviewed the situation. If Robert makes false accusations about financial impropriety, it would constitute defamation per se, given that it alleges criminal conduct affecting your professional reputation. And if he's already shared these allegations with reporters, we have cease and desist letters ready to go. Any publication that prints demonstrably false statements risks significant liability. I felt reassured, but still uneasy. Robert was unpredictable in his current state, and a legal response, while important, wouldn't undo the immediate damage of public accusations. As I was about to change into my dress, Catherine called one last time. "They've left the apartment," she reported, sounding slightly out of breath. "Robert and Natalie dressed exactly as planned. They're heading to the aviary now. 20 minutes, maybe less." "Where are you?" "Following in an Uber." "Miranda. He has a manila envelope with him, probably the so-called evidence. And he's still drinking. Whiskey in a travel mug." "Perfect. If Robert showed up intoxicated, it would only undermine whatever claims he intended to make." "Stay safe," I told Catherine. "And thank you for everything." I changed quickly into the Emerald Eli Saab, applied a final touch of makeup, and stepped out onto the rooftop just as the first guests were arriving. Eleanor Hayes, Robert's mother, was among them, elegant in navy blue, her expression a mixture of sympathy and determination. "Miranda," she greeted me, taking both my hands in hers. "You look magnificent." "Thank you for coming," I replied sincerely. "I know this can't be easy." "Nonsense. Robert made his choices just as his father did. It's time someone held him accountable." She squeezed my hands. "Now, I understand there might be some drama tonight?" "It's possible," I acknowledged. "Robert may try to crash the party with his mistress." Eleanor's lips thinned into a tight line. "Let him try. I have a few things to say to that young woman myself." By 7:15, the rooftop was filled with guests, friends, colleagues, and strategic invitees from Chicago's business community. The atmosphere was surprisingly celebratory, with genuine laughter and animated conversations. This wasn't the bitter gathering some might have expected, but rather a statement of resilience and new beginnings. At 7:20, Zoe appeared at my elbow. "They're here," she murmured. "Downstairs, arguing with security. The officers are intervening." I nodded, maintaining my composure as I continued my conversation with a group of friends. Inside, my heart raced, but I refused to let any anxiety show on my face. This was my event, my statement, my reclamation of narrative. Robert would not derail it. 5 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a text from Diane. "Subject detained by police for violation of TRO. Female companion making scene in lobby. Situation contained." Relief washed over me, quickly followed by a strange sense of disappointment. After all the build-up, all the preparation for confrontation, Robert wouldn't even make it to the party. At 7:30, as planned, I moved to the small stage area. The room quieted as Zoe handed me a microphone. "Good evening, friends," I began, my voice steady despite the emotions swirling within me. "Thank you all for coming tonight. I know this is an unconventional gathering." Gentle laughter rippled through the crowd. "A week ago, I discovered my husband of 10 years was having an affair. Our anniversary was 3 days later." I paused, allowing the impact of those simple facts to register. What followed was a crash course in the extent of his deception. Not just one affair, but many, stretching back nearly our entire marriage. I scanned the faces before me. Supportive, attentive, some showing righteous anger on my behalf. Tonight isn't about rage or retribution, though I've certainly felt both this week. It's about reclamation. Reclaiming my narrative, my independence, and yes, I smiled slightly, reclaiming the $50,000 Robert had set aside for our anniversary celebration. More laughter, stronger this time. Instead of jewelry I'd rarely wear or some extravagant gesture designed more to showcase his wealth than celebrate our union, I've chosen to use that money to mark the end of a chapter and the beginning of something new, something honest. I raised my champagne glass. So thank you for being here, for supporting me through this transition. And now, I believe we have a special presentation prepared. As I stepped away from the microphone, the lights dimmed, and the large screen behind me illuminated. The video I'd carefully prepared began to play. Images of Robert and Natalie entering hotels, dining together, the timestamp clearly showing our anniversary date on the yacht. All set to the song from our first dance at our wedding. The juxtaposition was devastating in its simplicity. No commentary was needed. The evidence spoke for itself. What happened next would become the stuff of Chicago society legend for years to come. As the video presentation reached its devastating conclusion, the final image showing Robert and Natalie kissing on the yacht, deck at sunset on our anniversary, the elevator doors at the far end of the rooftop slid open. Natalie Brooks stumbled onto the rooftop, mascara streaked down her face, her red designer dress slightly askew. She had somehow managed to evade security after Robert's detention by police. The room fell silent as she took in the scene, the elegant gathering, the damning images still frozen on the screen, my composed stance at the center of it all. "You think you've won, don't you?" she spat, her voice shrill with emotion. "You've ruined everything." Eleanor Hayes moved toward her, but I gently touched her arm, stopping her. This confrontation had been inevitable from the moment I discovered the affair. Better to have it here on my terms, surrounded by supporters, than in some uncontrolled environment of Robert's choosing. "Natalie," I acknowledged calmly, not approaching her but not retreating either. "I wasn't sure you'd make it tonight." "The police arrested him," she cried, gesturing wildly, "for trying to attend a party about him." "They arrested him for violating a restraining order," I corrected. "One he received after threatening me and my business." Natalie looked around desperately, perhaps only now realizing she was facing a room full of people who either knew me well or had heard Robert's version of events and found it wanting. "You don't understand," she continued, her voice dropping slightly. "Robert and I, it's real. What you two had was just for show. He told me everything. How you were cold, distant, only cared about your business." A ripple of disbelieving murmurs ran through the crowd. Anyone who knew me knew how thoroughly I'd supported Robert, often at the expense of my own ambitions. "I'm sure he did tell you." "That," I replied, maintaining my composure. "Just as he likely didn't tell you about Claire, or Jessica, or the others before you." Confusion flickered across her face. "What others?" "Robert has a pattern, Natalie. You're not the first affair, and if history is any indication, you wouldn't have been the last." I gestured toward Parker, who stepped forward with reluctant determination. His friend here helped facilitate many of his indiscretions over the years. Parker cleared his throat uncomfortably. "It's true. I'm not proud of it, but Robert has been unfaithful throughout his marriage. Multiple women." Natalie stared at him, her carefully constructed reality visibly crumbling. "No. He wouldn't. He loves me. He was going to leave her for me." "Was he?" I asked quietly. "Then why did he spend our 10th anniversary with you in secret, while maintaining the pretense of a surprise celebration for me? Men who intend to leave don't need elaborate deceptions." Eleanor Hayes stepped forward then, her patrician features set in a mask of dignified anger. "Young woman, I'm Robert's mother. And while it pains me deeply to say this, my son is a liar. Just like his father was. He has never intended to leave Miranda. The secret apartment, the offshore accounts, those aren't the actions of a man planning to start a new life openly. They're the actions of a man determined to maintain two separate lives indefinitely." Natalie swayed slightly, her hand finding the back of a chair for support. "The apartment, you know about that?" We know everything, I confirmed gently. The private investigator was very thorough. Something shifted in Natalie's expression then. A dawning realization, followed by a flash of anger not directed at me, but at a man who wasn't even present. He told me you didn't care about him, she said, her voice smaller now. That you were a business partner, not a real wife. That you'd be relieved when he finally left. Another convenient lie, I observed. Easier than admitting he was betraying someone who loved and supported him for a decade. Security personnel had appeared at the elevator, prepared to remove Natalie, but I waved them back. This unexpected confrontation was providing a kind of closure I hadn't anticipated. You should know, I continued, that Robert is currently facing serious legal consequences, not just for the affairs, but for financial misconduct and attempts to damage my professional reputation. Natalie's eyes widened. The envelopes. He said they contained proof you'd been stealing from clients. A gasp rippled through the room. Several of my clients were present, their expressions now concerned. Let me be absolutely clear, I addressed the room at large. Those allegations are completely false. My company's financial records are immaculate and open to examination. What Robert has are fabricated documents created to discredit me out of vengeance. Savannah stepped forward, her professional demeanor commanding immediate attention. As Ms. Hayes's attorney, I can confirm that these fabricated allegations are part of a pattern of retaliatory behavior that has already resulted in a temporary restraining order. Any dissemination of these false claims would constitute defamation, per se, and result in immediate legal action. The tension in the room dissipated somewhat, replaced by murmurs of support and outrage on my behalf. Natalie stood frozen, the full reality of her situation apparently sinking in. I didn't know, she whispered, about any of it. The other women, the financial things. He seemed so perfect. He's very good at creating that impression, I acknowledged, surprising myself with the lack of bitterness in my voice. It's what attracted me to him 10 years ago. For a moment, something like understanding passed between us, two women who had been deceived by the same man, albeit in different ways and to different degrees. Then Catherine appeared at Natalie's side, having slipped in during the confrontation. I think it's time for you to leave, she said firmly but not unkindly. Security will escort you downstairs. As Natalie was led away, her shoulders slumped in defeat, a smattering of applause broke out, quickly spreading until the entire rooftop erupted in supportive ovation. I raised my hands, genuinely touched by the show of solidarity, but eager to redirect the focus. Please, this evening isn't about confrontation or humiliation. It's about honesty, resilience, and new beginnings. The party resumed with renewed energy, the unexpected drama having somehow cemented the bonds among those present. Friends approached with heartfelt embraces, clients offered unwavering support, and even acquaintances I'd known primarily through Robert expressed admiration for my handling of both the divorce and tonight's unexpected confrontation. As midnight approached, Zoe appeared with the cake, the silver-frosted creation with its symbolically satisfying decoration. The crowd gathered around, champagne glasses raised. To Miranda, Catherine called out, who taught us all a masterclass in dignity under pressure. To Truth, added Parker, his expression reflecting both remorse for his past complicity and relief at his recent honesty. To New Beginnings, I concluded, raising my own glass. And to all of you who've shown me the true meaning of support. As the cake was served and conversations flowed around me, I found a quiet moment to step aside and gaze out at the Chicago skyline. The city lights twinkled like stars against the darkness, a vista I'd seen countless times but somehow never fully appreciated until this moment. Eleanor joined me, her presence a comfortable silence before she finally spoke. You know, she said reflectively, when Robert's father was caught in his third affair, I did what women of my generation were expected to do. I looked the other way, preserved the family name, sacrificed my dignity for appearance's sake. She turned to me, her expression both sad and proud. Watching you these past few days, seeing how you've handled this with such strength and grace, it's made me wonder what my life might have been if I'd found similar courage 40 years ago. I touched her hand gently. Different times, different choices. Yes, she agreed. But the same pain, the same betrayal. She squeezed my hand. I'm proud to have had you as a daughter-in-law, Miranda, and I hope we'll remain family, regardless of legal documents. I'd like that, I replied sincerely. As Eleanor moved away, to speak with other guests, my phone buzzed with a text from Diane. Robert released on bail. Currently at downtown apartment with legal team. No further movement expected tonight. One final loose end remained. I found Savannah near the bar, looking uncharacteristically relaxed with a glass of champagne. Robert's been released, I informed, her quietly. She nodded, unsurprised. First offense of the TRO, typical catch and release, but it establishes a pattern if he violates again. She studied my face. How are you feeling? Tonight didn't exactly go according to plan. I considered the question seriously. Better than expected, actually. There's something liberating about finally having everything in the open. No more secrets, no more pretense. The weeks ahead won't be easy, she cautioned. Robert will fight the divorce terms, possibly escalate his attempts at retaliation. I know, I acknowledged. But for tonight, I'm celebrating the fact that I've reclaimed my narrative. Everything else is just legal process. As the party wound down around 1 a.m., guests departing with warm embraces and promises of continued support, I found myself standing alone on the rooftop, the city spread out before me like a map of possibilities. The past week had been a whirlwind of discovery, decision, and action. In 5 days, I'd dismantled a 10-year marriage, confronted multiple betrayals, and emerged with my dignity and determination intact. Robert had planned to spend our anniversary celebrating with his mistress, while I waited at home for a surprise. That would never come. Instead, I'd used his anniversary budget to fund a declaration of independence, surrounded by genuine support while he sat in a police station, his deceptions finally exposed. The symmetry was perfect, the justice poetic. As I gathered my things to leave, Zoe approached with a small box. Almost forgot. This arrived for you this afternoon. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with a single charm, a phoenix rising, from ashes. The card read simply, "To new beginnings, with admiration, Savannah." I fastened it around my wrist, the cool metal a reminder that endings were often disguised beginnings. My marriage was over, but my story was far from finished. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, legal battles, professional adjustments, emotional processing of all that had happened. But tonight had proven I was more than capable of facing whatever came next. As I stepped into the elevator, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in its mirrored wall, head high, shoulders back, eyes clear and determined. Not Robert's wife, not a victim of betrayal. Simply Miranda Hayes, author of her own story, architect of her own future. The elevator doors closed on the scene of my liberation celebration, but opened onto the first chapter of everything that would come next. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.